campground breathed like an animal settling into sleep, tents dimming one by one, lanterns closing their eyes, the last pockets of laughter dissolving into the tall dark between pines. We arrived late, driving through a tunnel of trees that swallowed sound, the gravel road whispering under the tires as if the forest were spelling out a warning. Above the tree line, the moon hung wrong, not the pale coin that carries hikers home, but a smouldering wound, a red lamp without mercy. We said the word eclipse the way children say the word magic, but the shape in the sky did not belong to science. It belonged to appetite. We pitched the tent by headlamp, the fabric a dull orange glow against the night. The stakes finding soil with the blunt satisfaction of small victories. The ranger's board near the entrance had carried a neat list of closures and cautions: predators active, unconfirmed sightings, do not clean fish or game at campsites, keep food in containers. The administrative grammar of fear. We read it through the windshield and told ourselves the warnings belonged to other people, elsewhere on other nights. The air smelled of resin and faint wood smoke and the metal breath of a creek finding stones. The blood moon rose higher, round as a drum, skinned in something living. It pulled colour from our faces and left everything the tone of old bruises. I walked our perimeter like a novice sentry, checking lines, checking knots, checking locks, finding the same answer in every shadow: the forest watches. In the quiet, the campground made soft domestic sounds. Zippers, someone laughing too loudly at a story already told twice, the muffled clatter of a cooler, a baby's small cough, civilization threaded thinly through the trees. The thread looked fragile enough to break with one careless claw. The children vanished into their sleeping bags with the quick surrender, only exhaustion grants. The canvas took their shapes and held them gently. My partner arranged gear with the reverence of a ritual: stove here, boots there, the pocket knife placed where a hand could find it in the dark without thinking. The fire took easily. Pine needles gave up their stored sunlight, and the flames wrote their orange scripture along our faces. Sparks rose and disappeared into the red light as if the moon had claimed fire too. Every sound took on intention. A branch cracked somewhere beyond the ring of light and did not crack again. The creek shivered through the culverts like breath pulled between teeth. Leaves turned with that flat hand clap that belongs to a certain wind. The tent's nylon skin made its own small thunder as the temperature dropped. Once, something heavy moved far out in the black and stopped when we lifted our eyes, a pause that felt like a smile. We said the rituals of camping, the good-natured script that convinces the body that a floor of dirt is a bed of safety. We are fine. We are prepared. We are a family. The words built a bubble around the fire and the bubble held. We ate. We told a story. We watched the red eye in the sky and told ourselves it was not looking back. The ranger's truck patrolled once, tires whispering, cab light off, a dim green shape moving in a dimmer world. Then the engine sound thinned and the forest reclaimed. The road, the children's breathing found a soft duet. The fire settled to the glow that comes after conversation. I let my eyes crawl the distance to the tree line again and again. The silhouettes of pines held like a jury on a low limb, a shape too large for any owl uncurled, and then resolved to nothing when I blinked. My body tried the weight of old stories on for size and found that they fit too well. My tongue remembered the taste of bedtime warnings my grandparents believed, even when they laughed at their own belief. The first scrape arrived as a small sound, with a large shadow. Not a stumble. Through brush. Not the quick shuffle of a raccoon practicing thievery. A slow, deliberate draw of something hard over bark, a signature being practiced. I closed my eyes and opened them again, and discovered that the fire felt further away than it had before. The red disk in the sky pressed down, thickening the dark. Between trunks, until the space looked like it could support a body. The canvas breathed as the tent cooled. The ground's cold climbed up my calves. An insect drilled into the night with a mechanical faith that anything repeated often enough will be believed. The scrape came again, farther to the left, then again farther to the right, a triangulation that locked our small brightness in place. I counted breaths and lost count, began again, found the edges of panic and walked them like a perimeter in darkness. If the red light already sits on your bones, stay by the fire and join the pack before the night learns your name. Subscribe. Before the warmth slips and the dark claims the ground, the night made rooms around us and then moved the walls. Beyond the ring of fire, the campground coded itself into the memory of anyone who has ever slept in the open. The cough, 2 sites over, the zippers making their insect syllables, the dull slam of a car door closing slow to avoid waking children. Our family map shrank to Tent Fire Cooler Creek, and even that map felt borrowed. The red moon wrote a thin film over everything, as if the world had been dipped in a stain that brought grain to the surface. At the edge of the light, the brush parted as though a patient hand combed it. The children turned once in their sleep, the tent stretching and exhaling and then going motionless again. The scrape returned, this time with a companion sound, a low rumble that might have been wind but chose its own timing. The far-off laugh stopped as if cued. The creek's voice rose as if someone leaned down and cupped hands around it. The forests. Attention felt like weather. I walked beyond the fire with a stick pretending to be a staff. The way a man tries on old rolls to see if any remain in style. The ground changed quality under my boots, softer and then firmer, as if something had tamped it, paced it, owned it in circles. I found prints in the duff that made the wrong geometry, heelless, too long in front, the suggestion of nails that had thoughts about becoming claws. I brushed a finger along one edge and found it crisp, not softened by time. Whatever had passed this way had passed in the last hour. In the last minute, in the last blink, the hair along my forearms learned attention. Back near the tent, a faint line marked the canvas, a dirt-brown half-moon like the smile of a fingernail pressed slow and sure. It angel-winged outward into 2 more arcs, lower. Where a second and third nail had tested fabric, I imagined how the nylon would give under steady pressure, and the image arrived already complete, like a memory from a life I had not yet lived. I breathed as quietly as a person can breathe in air that insists on becoming ice. The wind presented a smell to the camp and waited for applause. Wet fur, copper pennies dissolving under the tongue. A musk with the weight of adult fear. My partner froze in that particular stillness that seals even thought. The fire popped once as if startled and then remembered to keep working. In the next site over, a phone screen flickered blue against a tent wall and then winked out. The red dome above continued its patient descent towards some understanding that had nothing to do with families. An hour stretched into its own animal. The scrape made a path around the safe places, never directly toward us, neither revealing nor hiding, simply writing. Branches lifted and lowered without wind. Once, something brushed the tent with the certain gentleness of an uninvited hand that knows what it is doing. The nylon sighed. A small indentation appeared where pressure became moment. I placed my palm there and felt a warmth that did not come from inside. Law keepers, survivors, and night listeners, leave what your elders taught you in the archive of this fire and let the old warnings breathe. Let the record carry your marks. So the next family recognizes the pattern. We shut the cooler latches deeper and dragged it close, a child's answer to a mathematics that eats children. My partner coiled a length of paracord with neat, concentrated fury and set it by the door. The knife took its position within an arm's blind reach. The stove's fuel canister became an idea we were not yet ready to say out loud. The creek recorded our arrangements in its endless sentence. At the margin of sight, eyes practiced being eyes and then surrendered to the older light. Something large moved and rebalanced its weight without stepping. The ground understood the lesson. An owl decided to quit the night early. The fire made a good imitation of courage. The red moon did not blink. The canvas surrendered with the sound of clothing becoming trash. The first claw took a straight line down, the second took a parallel, the third joined them in a zipper of ruin. Cold air poured over sleeping bags and gear, a slate-tasting flood that removed the last excuses. The shape that filled the tier did not belong to deer or bear or any menu item on a ranger's safety talk. It carried human height to a place a man's spine would have declined. Its shoulders wore the engineering of a machine built for the exact problem of us. Its face held a history that had forgotten how to be anything but hunger. There is seeing, and there is seeing. The red lens of the moon turned muscle into diagrams and claws into equations. The creature's coat drank the fire's light and gave none back. Its breath wrote small storms in front of its mouth. Ears tracked panic. Eyes held the dilated calm of a surgeon. It leaned into the tent space, and the nylon found a new language to speak, and then spoke no more. Children's breathing inverted. Into silence, and then into sound that could stumble and fall and get up again. I became motion. Arms found children and placed them in the corridor between fear and trees. Boots chose to be worn or carried. The stove became a threat, and then a hope, and then a dropped piece of metal kicking itself on the ground. The beasts, and closed on a sleeping bag, with that odd delicacy strength sometimes shows when it knows it does not need to hurry. The bag rose and split, and feathers climbed the red wind like snow learning to fly. The fire surged as if insulted. Sparks found. Fern died there. The beast stepped through the ring, and every physical object in camp adjusted itself by half an inch, as if making way. The cooler toppled, lid slamming hard enough to wake any bear within miles, but only our small human breath answered. The creature's legs moved with a runner's efficiency, grafted onto a locomotive's inevitability. It crossed the space between us and the tree line the way a thought crosses a doubt, completely if the rip of canvas and the wink of claws crawled your skin into armor. Leave your mark with a like and tell the algorithm you walked through this part alive. Survivors sign the ledger with heat and bone. We crashed the brush with the grace of people who had just learned their bodies again. Branches wrote their own angry script along our coats. The red light pressed a thumb against every wrong step. Behind us, the tent threw off what was left of itself and lay down like a wounded thing choosing ground. The beast's footfalls did not pound. They arrived, and then were already elsewhere, a pattern that taught muscles to fail early. The terror did not howl. It made a noise low in its chest that placed a hand under the spine and lifted the vertebrae one by one. That sound moved through the trees like an idea gaining believers. My partner's breath learned to hide in thin spaces. The children's. Shoes determined to become anchors. The trail refused to be found where we needed it most, and then declared itself at our feet with the indifferent confidence of a map. The campground, a community the size of forgiveness, slept or pretended to. Somewhere a dog tried to invent itself into a warning and then reconsidered the project. The ranger's road burned faintly with the last intention of a patrol. The creek sang 3 notes, and the 4th fell apart. The forest took our measure and decided our speed for us. The blood moon poured through branches, as if a slaughterhouse had learned to be sky. The clearing appeared like a stage done with rehearsal, a circle of trampled grasses and old ash bowls, ringed in stumps that had once been chairs for people who preferred witnesses. We understood what a trap looks like, when the trap is the concept of open ground. The beast took position at the tree line and watched us enter. Its chest lifted and lowered with the patience of landforms. It did not charge. It let our stamina narrow. It let the children burn the last of their sprint and trade it for a wobble. It marked who would be the first to fall by the angle of a knee and stored the calculation with the tidy thrift of a professional. It circled the clearing without stepping into it, writing its ownership into the dirt by being the only thing that refused to touch it. We broke for the far side and discovered that far sides repeat. Every exit angled back into the same geometry. The sky pressed its red thumbprint over us, and the stamp would not wash. A tree wore the marks of an old quarrel at shoulder height. 4 gouges parallel and deep enough to count ring growth. On the ground nearby, a scatter of bones polished by tongues, and time made their soft, clicking argument when boots disturbed them. Some had the clean swerve of deer, some did not. The beast closed distance in the loose, arrogant stride of something that never learned to lose. It loped and paused and loped again, herding without touching, instructing without speaking, teaching without kindness. Fear became math again, and we showed ourselves poor at it. We made our last sprint too early and paid immediately at the bank of breath the children leaned into, us heavy and necessary. The forest leaned away, offering nothing. Survival writes itself in choices carved on nerves. Drop your move below and mark your path in the ledger of the living. Hide, hold, or move until the moon forgets your name. The sound of the creek returned, nearer, louder, a line on the map promising change. Water means edge, obstacle, a different physics. The trail led us to its bank with the gleeful neutrality of terrain, and then stopped. The creek ran black and red under the bloodlight, shouldered with ice at its margins, its middle fast, its voice certain. On the far side, a narrow run of gravel showed prints not made by hooves, not made by boots. The creature had crossed here often. The creature would cross here again. That felt like both an answer and a sentence. We moved upstream on the slick margin, every step a small negotiation between gravity, fear, and the desire. To keep bones inside skins, the beast paralleled us through the trees with the loose economy of something that finds fitness vulgar to display. When we stopped, it stopped. When we slid, it watched. When a branch snapped under a small foot, its ears made a tiny, satisfied tilt that wrote a note in my marrow. The stones presented themselves the way evidence sometimes does when a case wants to be solved, half buried in moss and half resurrected by winter's scouring. They made a ring that could have been natural if nature cared for circles. Each carried shallow cut marks that at first read as weather and then insisted on intention. I brushed one with a glove and found soot in the grooves, old and recent at once, as if fires here had learned to age strangely. A tin badge lay in the needle litter, its pin rusted to boredom, its face scoured by grit until the numbers danced. In and out of readability, near it, a shredded corner of a map, the campground a pale grid, a hand adding a second map in heavier lines that led from site numbers to this ring. Someone had drawn the moon in red pencil where it would be tonight. A note in block letters had bled and then held, "Do not let them sleep here." The law my grandparents loved wore its festive clothing in memory. Wolves that walked upright, curses that traveled through families the way eye color does, nights when the moon cut its thumb and held it over the world. The law the stone spoke did not dress up. It preferred work clothes. It described a calendar not kept in kitchens, a rotation of places taken and places left to rest, a tradition of hunting that did not need to eat to be satisfied. Under bloodlight, the ledger opens. Under bloodlight, witnesses are chosen as much. As prey, the beast stepped into the ring as into an office. It placed one palm against the nearest stone with the intimacy of a hand on a shoulder. The cut marks lined with shadow, and the soot deepened and erased at the same time. The creature lifted its muzzle to the red eye and drew a breath long enough to measure a life. It turned its head and regarded us the way a craftsman regards wood, looking for the grain that will either split cleanly or fight the cut. Curses do not end. They echo. Subscribe to the archive and hold the record open so the next howl finds you first and not alone. The air thickened to the density of liquid. The red washed through a saturation that made the world a single color with 1,000 textures. The beast leaned back as if to sit and then stood taller in a single unwinding that explained statues to me. Its coat escalated from thick to armor, hairs standing as if charged, the shoulders rolling like boulders waking. The nails remembered. They were claws, and reintroduced themselves to the earth. The jaw learned a new angle, the eyes forgot mammals and borrowed something older. The change did not begin so much as continue, the way a river is never not becoming the sea. Somewhere behind us, a truck engine coughed and then decided not to. A light touched the treetops and withdrew, as if embarrassed by its own brightness. The campground beyond our sight lived its small human hour, marshmallows turning to sugar glass, stories lifting and settling, a father saying time for bed in a voice that asked please. The ring of stones carried none of that script. It offered one line only, scratched into itself and asked to be read by anyone foolish enough to learn that language. We broke the ring because no ring deserves to hold people. We turned toward the creek as toward a door that would open if asked forcefully enough. The creature let us move, because permission is a lesson more durable than fences. The gravel slid. The ice took one child's foot and considered keeping it. The water put its black hands on knees and asked for plans. The red light made every choice look like injury. The stove became the kind of idea that ends nights. The fuel canister sat among pans and forks, where we had dropped it earlier. My partner's hand found it with the muscle memory of a life lived among small domestic tools. The cap's thread performed its one trick and then surrendered. The gas kissed the air in a clean little hiss that would have been friendly in any other world. Here it sounded like a fuse becoming nouns. I lit a scrap of paper and held it like an apology. The flame learned red and then decided to be its own color anyway. The wind argued. The paper won for a second long enough to count backwards. From one, we threw the burning into the vapor, and the vapor remembered it loved fire. The beast turned its head, not afraid, not even wary, simply registering that prey had developed opposable thumbs for a reason. The burst lifted into a flower that felt like summer shouting. The creature stepped through it with the dignity of a monarch walking through confetti, but fur remembers heat even when skin does not. A singe found a seam near the elbow, and the smell of hot hair arrived as a new note in the song. The creature made a sound between annoyance and respect. It chose a new angle and found me with it. The ground lifted to strike my shoulder because gravity also keeps ledges. I rolled and the world rolled slower. The red above took my measure with the clinical patience of a lamp at a hospital. When you run out of verbs, the body supplies one more. I threw the canister's second cousin into the last of the burning, an offering that grew louder than intention. The flash found claws and shoved them back half a step. Half a step is a good chapter if you have the sense to read it. We reached the creek, and the ice became a path because fear will teach balance to anyone who has ever fallen downstairs. The children crossed small and perfect as prayers. My partner's boot punched, threw once to the ankle, and came back with the creek's bite. We linked hands, and we were a rope the water learned to respect. The beast weighed the water the way a hunter weighs distance to a sparrow. It disliked the crack of ice under weight, and then remembered it did not need to like or dislike. It placed one claw where the current ran under clear glass and watched fissures appear, like lightning in a night turned upside down. It chose the gravel bar and crossed where crossing felt like choice. The ring of stones watched, unmoved, a jury taking notes for a verdict already written. When this chapter exhales, follow the howl on the screen and walk into the next confession. The change that waits there has sharper teeth than this one, and the moon has more than one face. We reached the far bank and ran until running lost its verbs again. The Ranger Road presented itself stripped of glamour and perfect in its blandness. We took it like medicine. Behind us, the forest decided whether to continue the lesson. The creature followed, not because it needed to hurry, but because a story appreciates completion. The red eye slid toward the rim of pines, as if bored with our timing and busy with its own. Dawn bleached the campground into a map of errors. Our tent lay imploded, ribs exposed, fabric torn into ribbons that looked arranged until you understood the arrangement was coincidence. The fire ring wore a new geometry. Stones flipped, as if a hand had resolved to tidy and then forgotten the word. Feathers salted the ground where a sleeping bag had exploded into weather. The cooler rested on its side, with the idiot grin a cooler wears when it has fallen. The stove crouched in ash like a war story. Ranger voices arrived with clipboards built into their throats. Polite disbelief can wear a uniform like a suit. They said words that belonged to daylight, cougar, bear, panic. They wrote down the name of the moon, as if that would help. They did not write down the ring of stones, because the map they carried did not include it. Their boots stood where the claw prints wanted to be and translated them into shoe prints. They took photos that would show nothing to anyone who had not been here when the world amended its rules. We packed slowly because speed mocks the body after a night like that. Every object came back into the car with a small ceremony. The children buried their faces in blankets that smelled like the house. The knife found a new pocket and would live there for a while. The paracord became a relic. The canister tops clinked together like a bell that had not learned to be holy. The creek said goodbye by saying the same thing it always says, which is everything. Home is a word that works until a night teaches it to limp. Windows have shapes. Now, not all of them rectangles. The sound of nylon sliding across itself can move me into a room that does not exist and will not stop existing. The red of traffic lights insists on telling the wrong story at the wrong time. The calendar will not print the blood moon in ink that looks like danger. It prefers pastels. It prefers polite circles around dates where nothing will happen. I have learned to keep a ledger the calendar does not keep. I tell the account here, because stories are the only fences we can build that a clawed hand hesitates to cross. A horror channel wants fear for entertainment, and I do not refuse that. It also wants testimony, and I offer that too under Bloodlight. A werewolf hunted a family, because that is what it is made to do when the old gears engage. It tested canvas and bone and breath and patience. It wrote its signature in claw on bark and in heat on skin. It kept a distance until the distance no longer taught. It closed that distance and then reopened it because ritual had more steps. It did not eat because hunger is only one verb in a language that includes ceremony. The pack grows by whisper, not by mercy. Share this account and step into the archive so the next rise finds more of us awake, more of us ready, fewer of us alone. The scar the night left is not a line, it is a lens. It changes the light that passes through. It changes how faces register, how rooms sound, how the wind speaks when it finds corners. It makes a different person of a parent who thought safety was a set of instructions and a pocket knife. It makes a different person of a child who now maps bedrooms by exits. We do not practice fear. We practice listening. We practice looking twice into the places where the red chooses to live. The blood moon will rise again. That is neither prophecy nor warning. It is weather when it does. Some family will be making a small fire in a small circle and telling themselves stories that hug the edges of truth. Because hugging tight hurts, the forest will test the perimeter with a measured hand. The canvas will breathe. The stones will continue their slow work of remembering. The creek will sing the same 3 notes and invite a fourth that refuses to be born. I do not offer courage. I offer a map you can fold into a pocket, a ledger you can sign with breath. I offer the shape of the red light on the ground and the places where the ground learns to break. I offer the sound the tent makes when it decides to be a mouth instead of a wall. I offer the patience of the creature and the patience of the families who go on despite it. I offer a small set of verbs that will get you from the ring to the road. Legends do not end. They lengthen. We do not beat them, we accompany them. We learn where to walk when the moon becomes more than a moon. We learn to bring home those who can be brought home and to speak the names of those who cannot without letting them fall off. The edge of speech We hold the night to its work and let the day do its opposite. The campground returns to children and bicycles and bacon and the clean smoke that means eggs. The ranger's board gets a new sheet with new closures and a more specific font. The calendar accepts another circle and calls it astronomy. I keep a different calendar, and it does not ask for pens. It asks for breath. It asks for a certain way of standing when the world decides to be taller than you remembered. It asks for listening if the red returns and you find yourself under it, knowing the story is not the same as escaping it, but it is not nothing. It is a hand on your shoulder pointing you toward the water and the road and the hour when the engine will cough and then commit. It is a voice that will not use questions and will not use lies. It is this: move, then move again, then keep moving, until the map remembers your name. Under the blood moon, the hunt continues, and the record keeps its pages open. And for those who hunger for more, step deeper into the shadows with our ultimate werewolf horror playlist, linked in the description below. In the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them, and trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.